Liz, you ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. It's a little after 6, so let's call this Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. And can I get a roll call of the members
Andy Bailey,
here?
Rick Mueller is absent, Stacy Pettigo,
Here.
Scott Hudspensberger is absent, Chester Bankus,
Here.
Attorney Jay Moore is also present, as well as staff members Liz Stitzel.
Good. Okay, let's go through the disposition of the minutes. Did everybody have any corrections to the minutes as they were presented? Okay. Looking for a
I
motion.
came in here last minute. I feel like I should be passing.
Looking for a motion.
So presented, I'll make that motion.
All right, I'll second it. All those approve the motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. So, no old business. So now it's time for the public hearings. Application CC 2023-00015, docket 03-23-SE, petition of Chad Moore and Kelly Moore. They're requesting a approval of a special exception. Would you take us through the staff report, please?
Definitely, so, as you stated, this is Chad and Kelly Moore, at 5151 East, 100 North, requesting a special exception for a Class 2 home occupation. The nature of the home occupation specifically will be, operating an animal grooming business and an existing accessory structure. Both this property and all the surrounding land are zoned agriculturally. The site is about a 1 acre lot. It's on the south side of 100 North between 500 East and State Road 29 in Michigan Township. The property is owned by Chad Moore. Kelly Moore is his sister-in-law, and she lives across the road. The two petitioners will be operating the business jointly. It's already been registered as an LLC through the state of Indiana. And in order for that animal grooming business to solely operate without kenneling of animals overnight versus going through as a kennel and being larger, it requires a special exception as a home occupation. Now, I would note if for some reason animals were being kenneled overnight, then that would change it to a kennel and it would be looked at differently. There's a map there that just kind of shows you the relationship of the two residences to each other. And in terms of request analysis, first, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located in the general regulations of the ordinance. So Class 2 home occupations are a special exception in the agricultural district. They do have supplemental standards in Unified Development Ordinance 516.02 that must be met in order to be approved. So those are listed in the staff report. First, the occupation has to be carried on by a resident of the premises. So Chad Moore is one of the petitioners and the business owners, and he does live in the dwelling at the petition site. Kelly Moore lives across the street, but for purposes of this, she'd be considered like an employee coming in to work. This is the only home occupation on the premises that staff is aware of. Two, the exterior indications of the home occupation still need to stay residential in character. And this will be proposed to operate out of an accessory structure that sits back from the road. There's several trees that kind of screen that view a little bit. It would appear that the business operation will be minimally seen, if at all. The third standard is that the home occupation has to be clearly subordinate to the residential purpose on the structure, or on the property, and this standard does appear to be met. 4, no more than 5 vehicles or pieces of equipment other than automobiles will be operated from the site or stored there overnight. So being an animal grooming business, there shouldn't be any issues staying under this number. They don't have much in the way of delivery vehicles or large equipment, so it should just be how many customers come in at a time. Typically for this type of business, you usually see about 2 vehicles at a time, somebody dropping off an animal and somebody picking up an animal. Since they're not kenneling, there's not going to be a large number of animals sitting there, waiting. Next, that the outdoor storage of materials, equipment, or goods are effectively screened from adjacent properties on the road. This standard does appear to be met. The materials you would need for an animal grooming business would need to be kept indoors anyway, because that's where the business is. Next, the sales or display of articles produced on or off the premises are screened from adjacent properties in the road. There are no items for sale or displays planned for this particular home occupation, so it complies. The use may increase vehicular traffic flow by no more than 2 additional vehicles at a time beyond what's normally expected at that residence. And this is different than your pieces of equipment, which is a dog grooming, but if this was, say, a contractor's business, you might have an excavator or something like that. So anyway, this standard also appears to be met. Again, the only increase in traffic flow would be dropping off and picking up animals. Next, that the use is not creating noise, vibration, dust, smoke, other nuisances to a greater extent than what you'd expect at a residence. This standard appears to be met. Everything in terms of grooming would happen inside. I is no more than 1 sign is allowed, and that standard has to meet the size requirements in the signage ordinance, and that standard appears to be met. Next, the permit for a home occupation is not transferable, and a new permit must be applied for if there's a change in the occupation and the ownership of the property or the tenants in the house. This finding does appear to be met, but as always, the board should probably remind the petitioner that the approval is indeed not transferable, and it is only for them in that location, period. And finally, that the home occupation has to be of such size as to meet all of these standards, and that standard does appear to be met. So then moving on to the second finding, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to another property or persons, and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So given that the proposed use is an animal grooming business, it would not appear to create a condition that would be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to any property or person, since the operations will be conducted entirely inside. Furthermore, this approval will not include any permission for animals to be kenneled overnight. The state of Indiana has actually already looked at this project because of the situation with her being an employee and being across the street. We sent it to be examined, and they determined that a state design release is not needed in this particular case. They do not consider the proposed use to be a Class 1 structure in this case. Rodney Wan with the Health Department stated that there is an approved septic on file, and the proposed use is small enough because no animals are being boarded. So he considers it kind of a lower level use. He did state that he told petitioners they need to make sure their plumbing, if it isn't already, does need to be connected to the existing septic for the grooming area. 3, the proposed use shall be site-oriented and landscaped, so the relationship of its grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. This is an attractive and well-maintained property. There will only be 1 4-square-foot sign permitted for the advertisement of the business, and the building does already match the house and mesh with the agricultural area around it. Does not appear there's an adverse effect on value of adjacent properties. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. This proposed home occupation as an animal grooming business will be entirely inside. Typically, only 1 or 2 pets will be present at a given time, with 1 being dropped off and 1 being picked up before and after receiving services. Again, as an animal grooming home occupation, there cannot be animals kept overnight for other people. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. There's plenty of off-street parking on this site. That's not a concern. And finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of this ordinance and shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So economic development goal 1, objective 4 of the 2012 comprehensive plan states to promote home-based businesses, to grow our own new businesses in Clinton County. And under that, action step 1 talks about maintaining good standards within the zoning ordinance regarding size, parking, screening, and other appropriate criteria that provide for a variety of home-based businesses. So as long as this proposal meets the standards of the zoning ordinance and continues to operate within those parameters, it would be consistent with this finding. The general idea with home occupations is if they're successful and they grow, and they eventually move to a different location where the zoning district allows them to get larger. Consequently, as a recommendation, staff would recommend to approve the special exception with a couple conditions. First, that there be no accumulation of junk or debris on the exterior grounds. We often put that on home occupations. And secondly, if later on they add offices or restrooms or do any kind of remodeling in that building, they do need to meet all building codes, septic approval, and other requirements for construction. And again, as that reminder, the approval would not be transferable. That concludes the staff report.
Thank you. Is the petitioner here and have anything to add?
Kelly Moore. I think they covered, also, it's just a small area of their existing building.
Is there any other people that'd like to speak on this case? Any board discussion?
When you think about animal, does that just relate to dogs and cats, or is it something more?
Yeah, so this is, animal grooming, you're typically talking about dogs and cats. That said, I don't know that if somebody brought a hamster, I would have a huge zoning case.
I will only be grooming dogs.
And you can.
Go feed for llamas.
If you have a concern about that, we would typically view livestock differently, but if you have a concern about that, you could certainly add a condition making it clear that it's only for dogs and cats or domestic animals or something to that
But-
effect.
It is in
Farm
A1
animals
zoning.
then would fall under ag.
Well, they are ag, so yes, I mean,
I mean, I think
You know.
if somebody wanted to have their prize,
Chicken?
well, I was gonna say cattle
Yeah.
that was gonna be shown, they brought it in to have it,
yeah.
groomed in advance, I think they probably could under,
Well, it's tied into the standards in the back for a domestic animal grooming, so you'd have to figure out how your livestock ordinance
Would be
crossed with that.
but, I
You know.
think, basically, you can have
A
that
typical
number
animal
of,
groomer could not, I'll put it that way. The only
Yeah.
question is if the home
But it-
occupation would cover.
well, I'm gonna say because it's in A1 though,
They
I-
could groom their own animals, but if they
Well-
were bringing in other animals to wash them for profit, it would be business.
well, but
Pet pigs.
agriculture's a business, so, I mean, the bottom line is, I think that you could do farm animals that are consistent with agriculture,
I'd
as
wanna
long
look
as
at
you
the-
don't have concentration issues.
I'd wanna look at the use table on that, it would probably go under rescues and other animal-related activities.
There you go.
Would be way too expensive to do
Yeah.
any kind of grooming for cattle.
I don't know.
Now, these 4-H people, they wanna win.
Special sheep in the market.
So we have these two, conditions. Is there any problem meeting those two? Are you guys, the office area and the restroom, it's already in place and stuff? Cool. Good deal, good deal. All right.
Well,
You want me to make, I'll move.
if you'd like to, sure. that's fine.
Okay. I move to approve application, CC 2023-00015, docket 03-23-SE, according to the findings in the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference with the following conditions: that there will be no accumulation of junk or debris on the outside exterior grounds. And condition number 2, if an office area or restrooms are added, they must meet all building codes and septic approval and requirements. And then also just to add is, this is a special exception just for you guys, and the transfer of that would, so if somebody decided to take over the business from you, you would have to,
Come back.
they would have to come back here to ask for the same exceptions that you guys are. So,
I'll be glad to make a second for that.
all right, it's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote then.
Andy Bailey,
Yes,
Lisa Pettiger,
Yes.
Chester Bengis.
Yes.
motion passes. Alright. So,
Welcome to stick around, or you
I'm gonna go
Are
make
you
dinner.
gonna give them time? The next one's already on?
Yeah.
Send us your dogs if you have. Thank you.
thank you. Alright, we need to, move to waive a filing deadline, or not.
I'll make the motion to move to waive the filing deadline for application CC 2023-00077.
Second. All those in favor signify by
Aye.
saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes, so the waiver for the filing deadlines, or we've approved the waiver for the filing deadline. Alright, let's move on to application CC 2023-00077, docket 04-23-VA. It's a petition of Clinton Prairie School Corporation. They're requesting a variance. Can you take us through the staff report, please, Liz?
As you noted, the applicant is Clinton Prairie School, and they're requesting a height variance. They'd like to put in a new identification sign in front of the school. They'd like it to be 10 foot tall. The ordinance currently only permits 6 foot. This is actually a standard that is on my list when there's enough spare time to do some ordinance revisions to revise, only because this is now the second school we've looked at this exact variance for. And when you're looking at the scale of school buildings and trying to make sure that people can see, it doesn't seem like it's a big controversial issue, so it makes sense to look at changing an ordinance when you find those kinds of things. So, this particular parcel is zoned residentially. To the north, you have some agricultural, there's rural residential and agricultural. To the east, it's south, and to the west, you've got agricultural. So kind of a mixed area. The petition site is on almost 33 acres on the west side of South 450 West in Section 24 of Perry Township. The petitioner would like to install a new sign, and they would like it to be 10 foot in height, and it will be used to identify the school, Clinton Prairie, which sits on the petition site. The site is surrounded by some residential, but mostly farmland. There's a couple pictures on the second page just showing that area in front of the school. In terms of an analysis, there's 3 findings that must exist in order to grant a variance. First, the approval will not be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So according to the site plan that was submitted, this sign will be 20 foot from the edge of the 450 West right-of-way, which exceeds the required setback of 15 foot. The square footage for the proposed sign also meets the required standard. It's only the height standard that is not met. This sign is proposed to be installed to the north of the middle access drive, and it appears that the heaviest traffic flow is kind of to the other 2 access drives. It was observed that there were cones set up when staff was out there taking photos that kind of blocks utilization of that middle drive during school hours. We thought maybe buses or something in or there. When attending after-school activities, parking is to the rear lot behind the school. So again, that middle access drive is not the primary one utilized. Therefore, it does not appear that that location is creating any type of safety issue, increasing its height, and it is so far set back, in excess of the required setback, that there's really little to no risk that that additional height is gonna have any effect on a vehicle's ability to see. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. So, it would be expected typically that a school would have an identification sign somewhere in front. And as proposed in the site plans, they proposed an attractive sign. It does not appear that this sign would affect nearby properties. There's just a farm field directly across the road. 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties in the use of the property. So the school sits on a little over 32 acres. The frontage is busy. It has multiple trees and lots of vehicles, especially at the beginning and the end of the school day and when there's activity. So there may be some practical difficulty in that, particularly from those exterior drives, the sign may not be visible if it's only 6 foot, especially if it's sitting 35 foot off the pavement surface of the road, which is 20 foot from the right-of-way. That right-of-way is a little wider than the road surface. So consequently, staff recommended to approve the variance request. And there was also attached to the staff report a site plan showing the style of the sign, what it will look like, and then showing where that sign is proposed to sit there on the north side of the middle drive. So hopefully that's helpful in seeing what's going on.
Thank you, Liz. Does the petitioner here and have anything to add?
John Miller, Superintendent Clinton Prairie.
Probably show people stuff to the mic.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
sorry.
No, you're fine. I would say that, we purposely have it set back a little bit further because in looking at, in the placement of that, we consider our buses that leave and come through that middle section, we want to make sure that it was set back far enough that it doesn't impede in any way of our buses pulling out onto 450, because we also know how busy 450 is.
Yeah.
Even with our nice new signs up that the county put up that says 30 miles an hour through that section, not a lot of people, are paying attention to that as they go through. But the sign is also, it's big enough to be identified and people to know who we are. And it is really, it is a new, modern, specific custom sign. That Green Signs is, they're here, they're our contractor, the ones that have designed it, and they'll be putting it in and doing everything with it. So it's really all I have on it. It'll light up. It's not an LED sign, so it's not going to be blaring out, but kind of a background light so that you can read it at night and see the CP kind of glowing at night. But so I think it'll look really neat for anybody coming through and on 450 seeing that. And it's set on a timer so that when our lights in our parking lot come on, it comes on. When they go off, it will go off. So.
Okay, good.
That's about all I have. And,
Good.
I said, she's here from Green Signs. She can follow up on anything. Drove all the way from Greensburg. I said, why? Because her boss told me.
So, is there anybody else that would like to add anything to it? Okay. Any discussion amongst the board here?
I think it's pretty simple from my standpoint.
Yep.
So I'll make a motion to approve application. Oh my. Get back here and see it. Okay. Yeah. CC 2023-00077, docket 04-23-VA. According to the findings of the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference.
Second. All right. Can we have a roll call vote when you're ready?
Right, incorporated.
You're fine.
All right, Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigrew,
Yes.
and Chester Vegas.
Yes.
Awesome. Motion passes. And good to go. Thank you.
Your meeting, you can stick around for entertainment, or you can carry on with your life.
Yeah. We don't have too much going on after that. So. Do we have any new business, Liz?
We do. We have two items to discuss tonight. The first one is something that I guess I'll put this under the category of preventative action. But we had ended up, when we did our town advisory board meeting for appointing the town representative to the area plan commission, we had an issue with one of the towns not being able to have a representative present last minute. And so we had called Jay to find out what we could do, and we found out post-COVID, state law has changed a little bit, and there is a way to do that, but you actually have to have a resolution that lays out what happens and in what way. And we thought it would probably be a good idea for us to ask both our Board of Zoning Appeals and our Plan Commission to adopt a version of the resolution as well, which, we want our members to all be physically present as much as possible. We owe that to our citizens, to be able to see face-to-face, especially with controversial meetings. It's important to have the nonverbals. But what it would mean is if we had a meeting where by some surprise, something happened last minute. We had this happen once last year, where we have two board members sitting here, and the third one who is coming suddenly has something come up, and now there's no quorum, and there's people sitting in the audience that you're gonna have to send home and then reschedule. this would allow, for us to use a method by which that board member can be seen and heard, to let them join into the meeting. So we, I know with the town advisory, I think we use like a FaceTime type of thing to let them join in. So we would have to make sure we figure out that component of it, but it would be hard to do it. You can't take an action if you don't have a quorum, so you wouldn't be able to fix it at that meeting.
Yeah.
So we thought it would be good, to discuss, and if the board's amenable to have signed ahead of time, since there's only 3 of you, I'll pass down, there's copies, but if you wanna do it, then we'll assign a resolution number and we'll have you guys sign. You are a majority of the board, so
Yeah.
action is possible,
Only if it's unanimous.
only if it's
Yeah.
unanimous. But we don't typically do resolutions, here in the area plan side, typically we change our board rules. So this is kind of a little bit different for me, but it seems more appropriate to do it by resolution in this case. So that's the way it was prepared. I wouldn't expect to suddenly start seeing a rash of these things. Usually if there's something that's coming up, we try to put it in the board rules so we don't have to adjust for it every time, but.
It allows us to maybe not have to have a special meeting because we didn't have a quorum.
As a
Or
last
we
minute
have to put some people off for a month. And especially when we get with our farm members, when we get into, planning and harvest season, it will help with that.
That was me.
There's not a storm outside. The audience doesn't appear to have gotten disruptive. What am I missing?
I dragged my paper across the mic, sorry.
That's really alarming.
Pretty sensitive mind.
My view as staff is, this gives us an additional tool. As a staff member, if we call you guys ahead of time and we know we don't have a quorum, we're gonna reschedule the meeting because it is not, the Board of Zoning Appeals is not elected, you're appointed. Your job is to try to be fair and to try to work through findings. And, citizens may not always like the way that a ruling goes, but I feel like it's important that they look in the eyes of the people talking to them and that there's a two-way conversation and we don't let ourselves get into a lazy habit of just not being present to serve our citizens. But this would cover those moments every now and again where by some surprise, we're all here, we didn't catch the quorum problem ahead of time, and it gives us a way to not waste everyone's time. And so that's kind of the way I would look at it as staff, is this isn't something I would plan on using by default, but it gives us a tool to, avoid inconveniencing people that have already planned their lives, and there's no way to rearrange last minute.
And it also allows somebody who's under the weather not to come in
It's true,
and
in
still
extenuating
participate.
Yeah, it's true, even if you have a quorum here, it would allow a board member who wasn't here for a reason other than being physically committed to join, and it only says you have to be visible and hearable to vote. You technically could call in and listen and, be part of the meeting, you just couldn't vote if you were only on by phone. So it allows for a way that members that aren't here, if they wish to participate, if they can't make it and there's a quorum, to join in as well and be recognized as being present.
So, do we have a way to handle that real well? This electronic communications would be popping up on that screen?
That screen doesn't have a two-way, so what we would do realistically is, one of us over here would use a handy-dandy iPad, and
Okay.
we would call up either using a Zoom or a FaceTime or another method we'd have to arrange with that member, and realistically, that's probably gonna go just about like that. So
So that can't, we,
that phone has no visual, there's no way to get a visual.
no, I meant that screen.
Not that I know of. You cannot see out of it. I do not know if we could put something on it. The
Well,
computer would have to have a camera, and the computer would have to have, an ability to receive video in, which most desktops do not. I don't see cameras on these. The thing with the iPad is the person in there can now see, and the people here can see. And you can turn them if you need to, at the risk of making
Like
them
my
ill.
iPad is synced with my.
I just don't know, I can ask ACCS, but I don't know that there's gonna be a viable way. We aren't even given the passcodes to be able to use the full screen all the way up. So, we'd have to see if there's even a way to do that. But if we put them up there, they would be visible to the audience, they would not be able to see you guys, and they'd be behind you.
Well, unless they had a little camera, I mean, they could put a little camera on, right up
Yeah.
on top of that. They make, and they are cheap.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it works or not, I don't know, but I think it'd be worth asking.
I can
You
ask.
can get one for $15.
If there, right, if there'd be a way that we could use that to put the face up there of the person that's in, that would make the, you're talking about letting the audience see the facial expression.
That would make somebody wanna come in having their face up on there.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, note to self: never have to
So,
comment.
so,
I missed it, what would it do?
I said it'd make you wanna come in, so
Oh.
they.
Yeah, right, yeah, because
having
you'd
your
be
mug
blowing
on
up, yeah,
there.
right.
That said, this resolution does not specifically say which method must be used, so we
Yeah.
can work through that on the fly and use whatever we have available. It just authorizes the ability to do it as long as you are both visible and hearable.
And my thought in questioning that is how it would take place is just, do we even have a way to make it happen?
Yeah, absolutely, I could do it right now on this.
Uh,
Whether, everybody thinks it's the best way or not, I can meet the letter of the law,
Yeah,
so.
and well, is a resolution like a rule or a law, or what is it? What,
Well, it's basically setting it's like when a town adopts a resolution, it is a way of taking official action.
But it
So
only
it
applies
is,
to your board.
it would be the way the Board of Zoning Appeals takes official action to establish the manner in which it will do this.
okay,
So I got a question, like, number 6 talks about board member may not attend more than 50% of the board's meetings in a calendar year unless these conditions. What's the consequences of, let's say that we're,
They're not gonna be able to participate.
well, yeah, they just won't be able to
They won't be able
participate.
to- And then honestly, as a staff member, and I guess I know this, I tell it to anybody, but when we have board members who habitually are not present, unless we know it's temporary and there's a reason, internally, there start being conversations about finding someone else,
Yeah.
because it's not fair to citizens that come in. We don't, you have a board of 5, you have a board of 7. If a few board members habitually aren't there, you risk having hung votes. You aren't giving, there is a reason each and every one of you is appointed based upon your background, who you are, who you're representing. So you're removing a section of representation from being present on the board for discussion. So, when we have, if I had a board member who wasn't here and wasn't attending by electronic communication at all and did not have an extenuating circumstance, I would be talking to the appointing body about locating another member and helping them do that. So realistically, that's what would happen, but in terms of legally, it just simply means if you exceed 50%, that board member can't keep participating and voting beyond that amount.
Or using that method.
Using that method.
Yeah, and the reason that is in there is that's statutory. This enabling statute sets that as sort of the minimum amount.
I think
that
the
you can
state's,
use it. So it's not, so you don't have someone who never comes to the meetings and always does this.
Always
I
phones
think
it
the
in.
state's idea is the same as kind of what staff said. This enabling legislation isn't designed to let boards move to 100% remote, never gathering or meeting and interacting with constituents. It's designed to enable you to continue to perform your duties through extenuating circumstances that may come up from time to time. Not to be the way that you do business habitually.
sure, yeah. So really, we'd still have to have the 3 people here physically.
No, only if, the board member who is your third has already, used electronic communication for more than 50% of the board meetings.
Oh, okay, so it says in number 5, it says at least 50% of the board members must be physically present
Yeah,
at any
That
No,
is an
meeting.
interesting question,
Yeah,
yeah.
so the answer is yes.
Unless one of you wants to volunteer to be halved.
Well, and see, that's,
Well, that's
that's
fine
the
with me.
problem.
Right?
That's the
problem with
problem.
five-member board.
Yeah, that's the problem with this on this particular board. It's
Yeah.
not as big of a deal on area plan since there's 7, but,
Right.
Yep, yep.
so, you know,
And how many were
is
on?
this,
That's
so
a fair
that's,
question. That's probably a Jay question. So I know when we did this for the town advisory, Jay was like,
Sorry.
yeah, should we do this for everybody? And I said, well, yeah, it makes sense to do for everybody, but it's a fair question.
that's a really good one because, you know, we really, the only thing that you're protecting is you essentially have to have a quorum physically here.
Right,
Yeah.
And so
You're
a
allowing the other two
two to
to participate if they
participate,
wish.
yes.
Which they cannot do right now.
Yeah, it's,
And-
this isn't gonna save a meeting from
No,
not
you're right,
making a
and I know you
quorum.
hadn't caught that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, what it would do though, is let's say you had one person totally absent, one person by Zoom and 3 present, and you have 3 of those present, you have a 2-to-1 vote. Well, that's no action.
Yeah.
If you have a 3-to-1 vote,
That's actually.
then we can take action.
yep, you're exactly right.
So there is some, it's not as much, you're right, it's not as much of a benefit, but
But
it still
there's
could,
got some benefits to
it
it,
still
yes.
could solve a problem.
Yep,
well, it meets,
And it doesn't hurt
Or you
anything.
could
I mean, I
have
guess.
someone who says, I can't vote. Who, you know,
Present.
who's present
Conflict
and
of
says,
interest.
I can't vote on this
Oh.
because I have a conflict.
and then you've got that 4th person that's an
You can
electronic that creates the quorum
So I
that
guess it
makes
falls in
it,
the category of can't
Or-
hurt, might help.
yeah,
Yeah.
There's nothing that adopting this harms with
Yeah.
respect to the board operating.
exactly.
But it might give more tools, should we need them, that we can't do seat of our pants when we realize we need them.
Yeah.
Good deal. Okay. So how do we need to proceed? We need to make a motion to,
Just somebody move and second and vote.
okay,
Yep, and then, I'll need to collect signatures from the 3 of you that are present. And
Okay.
then I'll assign the resolution number later, but it's not gonna be real exciting, it'll be like 2023-01.
so here it says, the board shall prepare a memoranda for a meeting in which a board member participates by electronic means of communications. Name of each board member who's physically present at the place where the meeting was conducted, the name of each board member who participated in the meeting by using electronic means.
We just have to show
So
that in our
means the minutes
minutes.
are gonna
Okay.
have to show
Yeah.
who was
Okay.
there by what means, which we do anyway, like if one of you steps out because you have a conflict of interest, or, we had a meeting with the plan commission way back, it was over the solar farm, when a board member's, wife went into labor, all of a sudden, in the middle of the meeting, and he needed to step out, so the minutes reflect those changes, and it would just reflect that as well, you'd state so-and-so is present electronically, and we would probably need to note if they were only audio, or if they were both audio and video, so we know if they were allowed to vote or not.
Okay. I'd make a motion to approve, do we have a resolution number?
Let's go with, I'm gonna, we don't do a lot of these, I'm gonna go with, R, so we know in our system that there's a resolution, 2023-01.
We're gonna have less than 100 this year?
That's the plan.
Okay. All right, so let me put this down here. Resolution R dash 2023 dash 01. So I make a motion to approve resolution R dash 2023 dash 01 as presented.
Second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's do a roll call vote.
Andy Bailey,
Yes,
Stacy Pedigo,
Yes.
Chester Venkis.
Yes.
Okay, approved
motion
3-0.
passing.
I have the, I'm just gonna pass the signature page down.
Okay.
You guys can each sign on your designated line, and meanwhile, Andy, if you're all right with it, I will move to the final item of other business.
Yep,
so you guys
sounds
can-
good.
Should we put the resolution number at the top of the page?
No, it's
so-
at the top of the first page.
Okay,
I just didn't hand the whole thing down.
Okay.
Okay, so the final item I've got is, a request for a special meeting, and I'm hoping that the 3 of us can manage to figure this out. If not, we'll have to do the best we can, and I'll have to float it to the other 2 members tomorrow to see if somebody can match. So, we've got a major development, coming into the community over by I-65 and 28. That you may have heard something about in the news, people talking about it, Banderas Point. It's gonna ultimately need to be a planned unit development, which means basically writes its own custom zoning district that will go to the plan commission and then on to the county commissioners, and it will have unique rules both in excess of our current zoning ordinance, but also in some areas, lightening certain things to get a certain custom look and feel, in that development. So one of the items that's come up is, there is going to be an entertainment venue in that, in the secondary tier of the overlay, and that entertainment venue, will include at times rodeo and livestock shows. And, the overlay district, the State Route 28 overlay, requires, everything be paved in all tiers, which covers this entire site. But, like many with livestock, they would like to be able to keep the lot specific for livestock trailer parking gravel. They cannot write themselves out of that standard in the PUD the way they can with underlying districts, where they wanna change a setback or a height standard, they can just do it, and if the commissioners approve it, they're good. Because this is in the overlying district, there's no way to exempt themselves from it, it sits on top of the PUD no matter what they do. So before they can place in the PUD any kind of exemption, from this standard, they have to have a variance, much like a subdivision would need to get a variance for a standard that they weren't gonna follow before the plan commission would be able to approve the subdivision that showed a lower setback. So, they filed this today, we need to advertise it, we can't hear it today, but there is a timeline they're trying to meet to get this to the plan commission, whether or not the variance is granted. They would like to get the PUD to the plan commission in the April meeting, which means when we look at filing deadlines, they really need it to be heard the third week of March. We can get an advertisement in the paper this Saturday, if we send it out in the next day or two, which then would give us 10 days ahead of, if we could call a special meeting, the 15th, 16th, or 17th, that can be during the day or in the evening.
What days are they?
Let's say Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, of March.
We do it on St. Patrick's Day, we all wear green.
Okay, so Jay is tangled the 15th. What does the 16th look like, knowing most people would rather not have a Friday evening meeting? And it can be during the day too, if that's a better time.
I'm available the 16th.
So that would be a Thursday,
That would be the Thursday,
okay.
and we could set it at different times, and since you're the three here, I guess,
I'm not available any of those days.
okay, so you're out completely that
Yep.
week. So I guess what about the other two of you, because I can then float a preferred date by the other two members and see if we can get a quorum.
March 16th works for me, what about you, Chester?
To the best of my knowledge, I don't have my calendar with me, but, Thursday or Friday should be acceptable.
Okay,
And any time during the day should be acceptable.
okay, so if I reach out to the other two members and they can get a day or a time, Thursday or Friday, then, we can go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
So,
So Friday, you're cutting into St. Patrick's Day, no.
and then the other thing I do need is to call a special meeting, the president can call that, or a majority of the members. So, I need some method of requesting that special
Okay.
meeting from the board. And,
So should we allow you the capability of doing either the 16th or 17th, depending upon what you find out?
yes,
Is that,
Yep.
that would be the best, right?
that would be,
Okay.
yeah, but you do have to officially say, yes, we're gonna call a special meeting and we'll determine this time, it'll be tomorrow, and usually
And
Greg
that
and Scott
would
are
be,
pretty quick to get
and
that.
that would be a motion, correct?
Yeah, that would be a motion, because then the majority of the members, you would,
So you'd like to have a motion to approve,
to call a special meeting.
to call a special meeting on either Thursday the 16th or Friday the 17th of March, in accordance with whatever other members would be available at that point in time, for the hearing of whatever it is that you mentioned.
It'll be a variance hearing.
Variance.
Okay.
I second.
Okay, so I got Chester. Okay. You can probably do your vote either way you want.
Yeah, let's just do a roll call vote real quick.
All right, Andy Bailey,
Yes.
Stacey Pettigrew,
Yes.
Mr. Vegas.
Yes.
Okay. So, unless for some reason I can't get a third member, we will call a meeting one of those 2 days, and I'll be in touch tomorrow, we'll reach out first thing in the morning, send an email out to all our board members and, see if we can get something. party. And then assuming we can, you guys will need to,
We should have it
come
on
get
the
letters and a
17th, and we
sign,
could have a
this
There
week,
you go.
and we'll get advertisement out. Right?
Thank you so much. And you can buy a Google Chromecast device, plug into the back of the TV, and broadcast it live from that.
Oh,
So the camera for that can broadcast onto the TV. Or if it's a smart TV and you have Roku,
Uh-huh.
Roku does the same thing. Roku app installed on an iPad.
that at home, you're right. I'll check with ACCS to see if this is just hardwired into the monitor as a second monitor, and it's, because I know it connects to this computer, or if it's a separate, operating the TV, that's a good idea.
I don't really know any of that, I'm just repeating stuff my kids say.
You sound very erudite.
Well, it's possible with the remote, you could probably even choose what channel to,
Yeah.
what input, and you might have different input.
Assuming that it is a TV and not set up only as a monitor, yeah.
Right, I think it'd be really well to ask somebody that
Yeah. I'll
has.
reach out to ACCS handles all of the system for the commissioners,
Okay.
so I'd need their permission, and then we'd have to get any additional passwords and permission from the commissioners to use their system, which that's
Yeah.
probably not a big deal, so.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much for your recommendation.
That's all I've got in terms of
Okay.
other business.
Cool. Next scheduled meeting is, our, there's Rick's, yep. Look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second, we're adjourned.
All right.
Do you have a signature page somewhere?
Yep, I've got it with the minutes.
I don't know how this works.